So today I had Nely Galan on the show. She's amazing. She's an author, a speaker, was a producer, does all the things. She keeps living life to the fullest, is interested in the metaverse, has a ton of wisdom to share with us. I had a great time talking with her and really look forward to you enjoying the talk. You started Adelante Movement, if I'm saying it correctly,
It's
to
correct.
help Latino women with business.
Well, adelante is a great word in Spanish. It's one of my favorite words because you could say it a lot of different ways. Like adelante means you go forward, go ahead, right? Or you can say adelante, like move your butt.
I love it.
So it's kind of like my version of just do it.
Yeah.
And yes, I felt like Latinas, in 2008, after the last crash, Latina and African American women sort of really ran to entrepreneurship because so many of their husbands and fathers had lost their jobs. And, Latinas specifically will do anything for their kids.
No, I know.
Like we got to hustle, we got to do it. But I felt like we had not been taught by our families or anybody sort of how to do it right. Like we all work really hard, but sometimes we don't work smart.
Yep.
And we didn't really know all of which I think a lot of women are not financially literate, right?
Right.
But in our cultures, we're not encouraged to pursue that. And so I really started going around the country talking to Latinas and saying, look, we've been pushed into like a greater life and into a women's movement of sorts. And we need to learn this stuff and we need to be financially self-reliant, which, is my mantra for all women.
Yes. Yes,
Because
yes.
to me, when I wrote the book Self-Made, to me, it's a double entendre too. It's like, I guess people think of a self-made person as an entrepreneur, but I don't think everybody's built to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I think every woman has to be built to make themselves over and over again. And that's what I think self-made really means. That in order to make it to the rest of your life, you're going to have to make yourself over and over again. You have to pivot. You're going to have to be open to change. Look at me. I just changed my entire life and moved to Florida because of personal reasons. And it's taken my financial life upside down because
sure.
Right now, California is not the best place to rent or sell your properties. I have a lot, that I wrote in my book, Don't Buy Shoes, Buy Buildings. I believe in women investing in real estate and in other things. And even I am like, oh boy, now I know what it feels like when your timing is wrong to do a geographic move.
Right.
So the life of women is like an obstacle course. And if we're not really open to changing and growing and evolving and learning, we're going to be screwed. As it is, it's hard to be a woman.
Right. No, I know when I graduated from college, I'll say that the best thing that ever happened to me was taking a job in finance right away, because I would have been a financial train wreck my entire life, because shoes like whispered my name when I walked past them in a mall, right? Like it was just one of those things. But then when you sit down with people and you learn the time value of money or the rule of 72 or all these little different financial things, it really helps you say, man, that's an expensive pair of shoes, because if I invested that money X number of years from now, that's really how much I'm spending.
It is really about mindfulness, right? It's about being
Yeah.
aware and going, okay, I have a choice to make. At least you know what that choice means, right? Whereas
Right.
when you're younger and you're financially illiterate, you're kind of like, I want to buy this. I want to buy a timeshare. I want to buy, it's all about your pleasure.
Right.
And you don't realize like your pleasure long-term is really going to be about having FU money.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, when we talk about Me Too, or we talk about, a bad boss, a bad husband, a bad situation, they kind of all go away when you have enough money to say, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that. Right?
100%.
So it's not that money makes you happy. It's that money gives you choices that you, and also as I tell everybody, when I was in my 20s, I went to Europe on $100 a day. You're not going to want to do that in your 50s.
Right.
And to be old with no money is the worst. Like it's the worst. So you do not want to be old having to make decisions that you can't afford healthcare, that you can't afford help. It's a very bad ending of your life. And nobody thinks that when you're 20, you're like, that's far away.
Oh yeah, no, you think you have forever, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I got into a car accident in 2018, and I think that what I was 38, and that was really my first aware, like I brushed death and I escaped it, right? And when all of a sudden you face death, you realize, oh wow, I mean, it's in your head, you know it's real. We don't get out of here alive, but until it's in your face, it changes the game.
It changes the game. And you know, because you know it could happen at any moment,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
like you don't think it could, but it could. You know, it's like when I remember when my son, when Kobe died, and he goes, Kobe died, and he's 41. Like,
Right.
how could Kobe die? And I go, yeah, anybody could die, like at any moment, right? And you really do have to live thinking that way. You really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Right.
Now, some people might think that way and then go, well, I'm just gonna spend all my money. But it's not very smart because, it's how
We
you
don't know when that day's coming,
don't
right?
know.
So if you don't know when that, I mean, it's that whole balance, which all of life is this magical balance that we're all striving to feel and arrive to, but you don't know. So you have to save for the future, but also enjoy today. And if you don't save for the future, then options like going to Europe for over $100 a day are not on the table. So there you
That's
go.
right. That's right. So I don't know. I just think it is, I wish I had known everything that I know now so many years ago, but also the world changes so much. And everything's almost going faster than it's ever gone.
Right.
You really realize that you really have to learn to be very flexible and just also I took my son just recently because we've had such a bad year between my parents' health failing and, me moving to Florida, but still having all my real estate here and knowing that it's a very bad moment. And my son's like, wow, this was a really bad year. And I go, we're going to Israel.
Yeah,
And
I
he
saw
goes,
that.
Israel. He goes, we're not even Jewish. Why are we going to Israel? And I go, because Israel is where everything began. It's the beginning of the world. It's where all cultures, all religions began. And I want you to go to a place where empires have fallen many
Yeah.
times and they have rebuilt many times. And you think your life is really bad and you don't even know what having a bad life is because people have really suffered through horrible things. And you almost have to go very macro and
Right.
think sort of above yourself and realize that what we're going through is nothing, especially in the United States. Like we
Right.
are going through bad times for the United States, but countries around the world have gone through this over and
Oh,
over and
oh,
over
it's
again with
crazy. I was in
civil wars.
Pakistan this summer, right? And
Oh
so
my God.
when I was leaving Pakistan, because that's where K2 is located, it was flooding, next level flooding, like bridges were being taken out, everything along that line. And like there's still, so I left Pakistan the first week of August. They're still dealing with flooding issues. That would never happen in the US, right? Like we would have something picked up or going around it that's still going on there. And it's sad. I mean, it destroys communities, it separates people apart, it's all kinds of stuff. And I think it's great that you took your son there because I think it's so important for our kids to travel and see the world outside of the lens of the US.
Yeah, I think for him it was really a game changer. He tells
Yeah.
me every day, he goes, Mom, that was the best trip ever. Because
Aw.
we had such deep conversations about, how many people have lived for how many centuries. And, like I think in America, kids they get stuck here. They really don't live in ancient times and in ancient places. And they've had a very privileged life.
Right.
And so when bad things happen, they think it's the end of the world and they don't really know, my parents, I was born in a communist country, Cuba, and my parents, were like well off and had gone to college and all of a sudden they lost everything and they had to get on a plane and come to the United States. They didn't speak the language and start working in factories when they were college educated people.
Right.
So, and they had to start all over again. And guess what? Be grateful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that we also forget that. And I myself forget it too sometimes. I go, oh my God. And then I go, you know what? It's really not that bad. It's the way, the rest of the world lives is always, kind of like pivoting and deciding, oh my God, And we just were not used to that. We're very spoiled. We've had a really great run for a long time.
What are some pivotal moments in your life that have like transformed you into who you are today?
Well, I think that the number one pivotal moment, I think, which I wrote in my book, is when I was a 7th grader and my parents put me in all-girl Catholic school, and they would at night complain, like my mother would say, we can't afford the school. What are we going to do? And then my father would be like, Jesus will help us. And I'm like, oh my God, Jesus doesn't know the nun at the school. She's going to call me to the front office and like kick me out of the school, you know? And I started selling Avon.
No way. Yes. So
Yeah,
yes, yes,
to help my
yes.
parents pay for the school. And then I had to tell the nuns to send a letter saying that I'd gotten a scholarship because I didn't want to embarrass my dad.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that whole, I think that was, I would say the most, I think that was the most powerful moment, because I realized that I was on a team, that I had to help the family, that my parents were having problems that I took in.
You took initiative and
Yeah,
said,
but,
hey,
but I also realized that I was empathetic, like I was an empath,
yeah,
that I really understood that my parents had problems and that I could solve these problems, that like even in my own little way, in today's world, I probably would be selling things online, right? But in that
right.
world, I sold things out of my locker and I did really well at it. And I think the sad part of that story is that I think I became, as I would say in psychology, parentified, like I became the parent.
Right.
And so we all have good and bad that comes from these pivotal moments. Some of them kind of, I always say I'm a natural born entrepreneur. I've been doing it since I'm in the 7th grade, but I also have a lot of damage for not being a child. And but I also think, how many kids in the world, like we're spoiled. How many kids in the world get to be a child? When you hear about kids in China working factories to make Apple phones, and not everyone has the privilege of getting to be a child for a very long time like we do here.
Right. Right.
So I think that was a pivotal moment. I think another pivotal moment is when I went to work for Norman Lear and Jerry Parengio, who owned this little TV station. And I went to, I was a routine reporter, and they're like, we're buying a Spanish TV station. You want to come and work for us? And I was like, ew, I don't want to work for Spanish TV. I work for CBS. I'm going to end up being a network correspondent. And Jerry Parengio goes, really? That sounds like a factory worker to me. He goes, do you want to learn from 2 billionaires how to run a business from the bottom up? Do you not know that the Latino market's going to be huge and you're going to be employee one? You're bound to be a millionaire if you just hang in there. And I quit being a on-air talent to go be the employee one of this little station. And I think it was the best decision I ever made in my life. And I don't think my kid would make that same decision, because when you're young, you're in your ego. You want to do stuff that's ego gratifying, right? But because I was broke and my parents were broke and I was an immigrant,
You're hungry.
I learned that when somebody smarter than you speaks, follow them.
Yeah.
And that same guy that told me that 4 years later sold the company, and I was mad at him. I was like, how could you sell this? And I didn't know. And he goes, young lady, those are my chips. If you want to play, if you think you have what it takes, go get your own chips. And I think that was pivotal moment number 3, because he basically was saying, go be an entrepreneur.
Right. Right.
And I don't know if you know this, but in my book, I say I started a business right after that, because he gave me $300,000 for the sale of the company, which everybody goes, well, he should have given you more. That was a lot of money for a little kid.
Yeah.
And a Mercedes-Benz, which I cashed in. So I had some cash and I started a business. And for 4 years, I did not make a penny.
I know, not a penny. How did you wait, let's dive into that. How did you stay with it? Like, how were you not panicking? What was that like?
No, I was panicking every day, but here's what I did. I went back to CBS.
Okay.
And I got a job as a stringer. A stringer is, just so for people that don't know, a stringer is somebody that goes and they send you off freelance to do reports for the news.
Okay.
And then Diane Sawyer's face appears, not yours. Right. So you go, because Diane Sawyer can't be in all those places at the same time, or whoever is the anchor woman, right? And so I became a stringer. So I would do these freelance stories to make money. And I decided to start this business launching TV channels abroad, because I felt like, channels like HBO, cable was big at the time, HBO, ESPN, all these people were not selling in Latin America. And for 4 years, everybody turned me down. I didn't panic because I had a side hustle job.
Mhm.
And I didn't panic because my boss, Jerry, from the other job, said to me, when I was your age, I started a business. And for 10 years, I didn't make money. And then I became a multimillionaire. And by the way, if I had to unpack this, I would tell every woman, don't do what I did. I tell women, do not leave your job until you have 2 clients.
2
And
clients.
those clients pay for everything. Like, you just can't. I would not just bootstrap it and go, I have 300,000 in the bank and I'm going to do it. Hence why I went back and got the job as a stringer.
Right.
But, timing is everything in life. So when I told all these companies, you should do this, excuse me, my timing was off.
You're ahead of the game.
They said no, but guess what? In the 4th year, I was living in a $300 4th floor walk up in the East Village in New York. And my parents would come and visit me and they'd be like, oh my God, you are going to lose your looks. You have not found a husband. Why do you want to be entrepreneur? Look at us. We lost everything. And they were not encouraging me. Like, my parents were not supporting me. They have never supported me. They think I'm cuckoo. But they have trauma as entrepreneurs. I mean,
Right.
as
Everything was taken.
So you can't listen sometimes to your parents. I tell this to you have to look at the source, right? If they're traumatized, how are they going to give me any good advice? I stuck it out, but I would have these like, dear God, please throw me a bone. This is like taking for, oh my God, I can't take it. I can't take. And in the 4th year, it was like, all of a sudden my timing was right. And HBO asked me to launch HBO in Latin America, and then ESPN. And then I get a call from this guy that I don't even know who he is. It turned out to be Rupert Murdoch.
Wow.
He was moving to America, buying Fox. And he's like, I want to launch 7 channels around the world. And I literally went from being broke
Yeah.
in New York to a year later, I had made $1 million.
Amazing.
So that's an extreme situation.
Right.
Where my timing was completely off. And then my timing was like right place, right time. And that's happened to me, I'd say 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
And my timing is off, and then it hits big. And my karma, not everybody has my karma, but I really have to struggle a lot and suffer a lot for things. I do. I am always tested. But then whatever the thing that I'm thinking that I think isn't going to work, it ends up working because I stick to it.
Right.
And a lot of people say to me, how do you know when you have to stick it out? And how do you know when you have to get out? And I have failed a lot. So I don't want to make it sound like, everything I do works. No, I've had a lot of failure. And the way that I know when it's time to just go, this is a freaking failure, let it go, is when you try everything you can possibly try. And I do, I'm like dogged. And everything is just going wrong. Like, there's no glimmer of hope. There's nothing. At a certain point, when you have to ask yourself that question, did I really try everything? Is there still a stone to turn? And when there isn't any more stones to turn, you have to almost say the universe is sending you a message. Let it go. Like, I remember I was working on a show that I love. I still love the show. I sell it to NBC. It was all going really well. And then all of a sudden, it's like collapsing before my very eyes. And it was during the 2008
financial crisis.
And it wasn't my fault. It wasn't anything I did. It was like they had all their advertisers pull out, right? It happened to every network. And I finally said, okay, I've done everything I can. It's not working. And I think to myself, thank God, because 6 months later, the advertising world crashed. The show was totally based on advertisers. And I figured it out one day and I go, I would have been $33 million in the hole. Like I would have owed people. I would have been
Oh,
like, I would have had to go bankrupt.
yeah.
So
I have
thank God I gave up,
right.
but I don't often give up.
Yeah, no, I get that. I have a story that kind of parallels that a little bit where I'm trying to climb the 7-second summit. So that's the second highest point in each continent. It has not been done by a female. So I'm super inspired to be the first. I went to K2, which is in Pakistan, in 2021. And so when I was there, I had not experienced failure yet in the mountains. Everything I've tried, I have succeeded at. And I pride myself in that. That's an identity that I hold tight to, right? And so I'm at K2 and I'm on a Pakistani team because at the time I wanted to climb with a company that was from the country that I was going to climb in. And I had all these ideas and da. And it wasn't safe. At the end of the day, the team was not a safe team. We had somebody die on our team. We had someone lose their hand on our team. We had someone break their leg. Like it was just one thing after another. And I was there thinking, I don't even know how I go home right now without a summit. Like, what does this look like? And I had to sit with that for a few minutes I had to sit with that with days. And at one point I finally decided, this isn't my story. Like I could die in this environment. This is a very deadly environment. We've had terrible things happen on our team right now. I need to go home. And I had been there for 5 weeks, right? So when you're at a place for 5 weeks to invest all that time, all that money, all that energy, and then at some point I was just like, this isn't right. So I came home. I actually landed in LA because that's the only flights that would fly me back to the US was LA or New York. I called the nanny at the house and I said, listen, I am not coming home yet. I'm a victim of my story still right now, and I can't face my children with this story. So I'm going to sit in LA for a couple of days, work through this feeling, work through this story. And when I can come out a hero, I will come home because I have to face everybody. And so then I came home and I realized that I was doing this whole journey to share, right? To share the experience of pursuit and to go for big things, and whatever showed up was part of it. And so I had this conversation with the kids saying, failure happens, like things happen. And it wasn't right for me this year, but I am going to go back next year. Okay. So next year I'm going back. This is why I came home.
You
And this
learned
is
something.
just a step in my process. So then the whole year is going by and I'm not excited about going back. I'm remembering all the bad things, right? Somehow our brain holds on to those easier than good moments at times. And I am not excited about going back. And I'm like, I have to go back because this is part of my goal. What can I do that will make me go back and actually enjoy my time and have possibilities show up? And what I realized is what I learned the first time I was there is that it's very expensive for Pakistani people to be able to climb their own mountain because they don't have the resources to buy the oxygen or to buy the equipment or to buy anything that works with it. So I'm like, I'm going to sponsor a Pakistani climber so that when I go back, I can bring somebody from their own country up their mountain. And if you climb K2 and you're from Pakistan, you have a job for life and your family moves into a whole different realm of possibility, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. It's a different world than what we live in here in the US. And so I went back this summer of 2022 and I summited. And that was the reason why that's the reason why I had the failure in the first place, right? That failure in the first place allowed me to make more possible when I came back. But you don't always know all of that in the moment. You just really have to plug into what that lesson is, because the truth will come out months later, right? Like the truth came out for you saying, hey, this didn't work out. It's super heavy. It doesn't feel good, but it saved you a whole world of hurt. And for me coming home, yeah, it was painful for a while, but then the opportunity that it provided couldn't have shown up any other way.
Yeah, I mean, failures are really, I mean, they don't feel good, but they are good.
Yeah.
And they do show you things that you need to see.
Right.
And I think there's always, at least for me, there's more failures than there are successes, but people only remember the 2 or 3 successes, right?
Right, right, right. Well, everybody thinks you're an overnight success. I'm like, no, actually, all the parties that I missed the last decade because I was slaving at my job, you forgot about that piece. Like, this has been 10 years, and then overnight you noticed.
Right, exactly. I mean, and that is the way it is. And things are take much longer than you think they're going to take.
Yep.
And along the way, you just think, oh my God, this isn't going to work out. And a lot of times it doesn't work out in that moment, you know, but it is about, and I love what you said about that you found out like what your intention was, because I think sometimes going back to the goal orientation, you
Right.
know, like for me, I've really, you know, when I was younger, I was like, I want to be the president of a network. I want to be this. I want to run a product. It was very goal oriented. And now I just think if I was going to say, why am I on earth? And I said this to my son because I want him to hear like that in order to be happy, you have to have like things like what you just said, right? That you want to do things that every day make you happy. So for me, it's like my reason for being on this earth is to grow every day.
Mm-hmm.
So that means every little thing I do or I learn, I grow, I whatever, I'm feeling like happy about it. Instead of saying, if I don't win an Emmy because I make a show, I'm not happy. Well, then you're going to be unhappy a lot.
Right.
Because it's not about those big things 99% of the time. It's about little things, little wins, little growth, little, you know, and I also think what I've learned over time is that I'm here to teach others what I know and to
Yeah,
learn from other people what they know.
for
And,
sure.
and that's really what makes me happy. So
Yeah.
if I'm doing that every day, it doesn't have to be some grandiose ending to the story. You know, I think that's another thing that in the United States, we get very grandiose because we see people that appear to be overnight successes or to appeal, you know, some tech guy that becomes a billionaire overnight or whatever. But we don't know people's lives before their grandiose moment or after.
Right. We
We
just
don't
get
know
that thin slice of that one
right.
moment.
And you don't know how, like, sometimes it seems like people have these incredible things happen, but you don't know how the end of the story is going to play out. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, and you know, when you look at the sort of the scheme of life and of the world, we all get some kind of cross to bear. And we also all get some gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And what you do with those two things is what makes you or breaks you.
Right. Right, right, right. No, I agree. I remember when I did Everest because that was kind of the start of this whole quest. And we got to the top and we were up there for 5 minutes. Like I was on this, like I had spent a year training. I was on the side of the mountain, peeing in a hole, living in a tent, right? Like all the things. We get to the top of Everest and it was so cold and so gnarly weather that we weren't allowed to stay up there because they're afraid the oxygen tanks were going to freeze. So we were there for 5 minutes.
And you were like, that's it?
And if you're doing this for the summit, you missed the point. Like you missed the point because the summit on almost all things is so short-lived compared to the entire journey of making it happen, right?
Yeah. And look, you chose a very big goal,
Right. Right.
many big goals, right? So that's the other thing. It's like when you choose those many big goals that are just almost like impossible, then the, you know, the odds and the difficulty and the challenge is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And that's why I think when people sometimes see people that do very big things and they go, well, they're so lucky because or for whatever reason, but you don't realize that choosing those kind of things comes with a whole lot of stuff,
It
right?
does. Yeah. No, it's a big commitment level. And to me, here's why I picked Everest. I knew that if I failed, just the attempt was worth it. Right? Like just being there was worth it for me, right? And here's what the summits have kind of come to mean is it's not even about the summit. Like the summit just signifies all the times you said yes when you could have said no. Because there's a million opportunities to turn around or to say no or to time out and say this isn't for me. But when you reach that summit, that's just a summary of all those things that you said, okay, I said yes, and here I am. And now I get to come home. I'm going to share to you that it's worth it. Like say yes to you, say yes to what makes you excited, and say yes if it lines up with how you want to spend your days. Like I love being outside. So training for Everest, I was outside hiking all the time. That was okay, great. If I don't summit Everest, I
I just
still had
want to
an
know
excellent
how you
time.
did all that and then had so many kids.
I know. Well, you have so many kids, so you need to do that so you stay sane.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a lot. So, but not everybody has it in them to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a certain, that's a certain thing inside of you.
True.
So do you think your near-death experience also just escalated everything for you?
It woke me up. I think to me, I was living under the premise that I'm going to launch. I had a business before, then I got into my children, and the business is still running itself, which kind of payrolls life. And then once the children were going to go to college, that's when I was going to get back to me and do whatever made me excited. Right. And then I got in that car accident, and that car accident made me say, well, what happens if I died? Like, what would my obituary say? And there's so many things that I wanted to see and do and experience and know. Like, I want to know what the tulips look like in the Netherlands, right? Like, I want to know, like, just things. And so when I got in that car accident, I started making it to like, what do I want to do with my life? And what can I do in my 40s that are not going to be as easy to do when I'm in my 80s if I live to 80, right? And that's when I started backing into like every year I'm doing something big that I'm excited about, that gets me fired up. And then at least I have like this, I don't know, these collection of memories that challenged me. And the mountain thing kind of evolved from one of my kids. I was going to climb a mountain called Ama de Blam in Nepal on my 40th. COVID happened, blah, 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 blah. And so when we were doing math homework at home, he said to me, like, I don't want to, I'm like, I'm bumming about my math, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, listen, buddy, we do hard things. You got this. He's like, if we do hard things, then why aren't you climbing Mount Everest? I don't even know what mountain you're climbing. And I'm like, you know what? Do your homework and I'll look at Everest. And so then I kind of leaned into Everest, and I noticed when they went to bed, I was still looking at it. And there was a part of me that wanted to do it. So I signed up. And in the pursuit of Everest, the coach I was working with said, you love to travel. You have 7 kids, there's 7 continents. Maybe you should look at this 7-second summit goal that hasn't been done by a female before. And so then that goal kind of evolved. And
I love it.
yeah, and you know how when you chase things that inspire you, just more doors open and so much more becomes possible. And that's how you know you're on your path.
Yes, for
That
sure.
has been, I kind of feel that goals call us. Like they know what you're interested in, and that kind of what lights you up. And then if you lean into those, the goal becomes the secondary thing. Like what comes out of that is just so much bigger and better than you could ever imagine.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. I think for me, I decided after I had done a lot of things and I had made money that I'd go back to school.
Yeah.
And I decided to then get a master's and doctorate. I wasn't just going to go to school. My son was 8 years old and he was like hating school. And he goes, you never finished college and you've done really well. And I go, watch me.
Awesome.
And I went back to school. And I think that what I thought I was going to school to do turned out to be so different than why I went to school. Like it took me down a path, and I don't think I would have written, for instance, I would have never written the book Self-Made had I not gone back to school, because I wasn't in the mode of writing. And I had to, when I went back to school, I had to write 96 papers and a master's thesis and a doctoral dissertation. And I studied psychology, and it really opened me up to like healing a lot of trauma from my childhood and my parents. And so I think I was in such an open place, and I became very expansive, that my ideas became completely different than what I had done prior to that.
Right.
And so I think that, yes, when you take on challenges, I do believe that you expand your possibilities. Right. And what you thought you were doing and why you were doing it ends up being something completely different.
It does. It definitely does. And so much more than what you ever thought, right? I mean, it's fascinating how it unfolds.
Also,
and
you
then
meet people that you never would have met.
Right. People you would have never, and that was, that's another journey blessing that I've had. I grew up in the Midwest, and you collect people, right? Like, it's like, this is what we're doing every year at this time, no matter what. Right. And then when you move out of that environment and then you go climb in some of these locations, I'll never see these people again. Like, there's no way. I mean, it's just, life's not going to circle us back together. I mean, maybe slim chance, but it allows you, knowing that when you're in those environments and in those experiences, you're in them 100%, because you're going to carry the memories back, and we're not going to meet every Thanksgiving for the next 50 years of our lives and have that experience happen. And it's just really helps me be present to the moment and just honored that I'm still alive and grateful of whatever shows up.
I love that. I so love that. And I think that that's deep. That's very deep. And that's really what it's all about.
Right.
Right?
No, I agree 100%. And what's funny, I mean, the side product of that is you live this life that you love, and then it gives permission to everybody around you to do the same thing.
It does. It really
Right? Like, I look at your Instagram feeds and the things that you're putting out there, like, I feel like $1 million after I listen to those. And because
Well,
it
you
hits
know what?
home.
Because I think for women too, I think to be able to do these things, you have to see someone else.
Yeah.
It's so important because we have so few role models really for people who like break out of a box. And also to hear that just because you've broken out of a box doesn't mean the next day you don't get up again and you're afraid again.
Right.
Right? Like, it's not, I always say you're not a baked cake. Like, you're a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the last 2 years I've been really like, I laugh because I almost have to read my book again because I've been challenged on a lot of the things that I wrote in my book about, like, don't buy shoes, buy buildings, when buildings have been really like my problem. I bought a lot of buildings and they've been my problem. And I'm like, well, now you get to try out all the stuff you tell other women, hang in there, don't freak out, and we do get challenged by the same things we think we know. We get challenged to know that we have to know them again, or readdress them, or rethink them. I always hate when people think of other people as their gurus, because we're just really human beings and we only know what we know today. Tomorrow we may rethink the whole thing, and I think it is about evolving all the time and sharing what you're learning today. And also saying, like, if you've seen my Instagram, I talk a lot about, this is a tough moment. Like, we have to hunker down. Like, it's not a time to be crazy about certain things, you have to put your priorities in a good place, especially after a pandemic. So I'm always learning and evolving and changing and rethinking, and also very open to admitting, I think I was wrong about this. I think I thought this, but things have changed. And I think that when you really understand that we're all just doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And when we share the best we can, but it doesn't mean it's finite. This is like what you should know for the rest of your life. Things can change. And that's what I think we've all experienced in hyperspeed the last few years.
Oh, definitely. And now we're coming into a
what did we think? A pandemic could happen and we'd all be locked down? I mean, there's no way you could have predicted that.
Right. No, I know it's been a wild ride, and being able to be self-reliant is a big deal these days. And I think it's going to continue to be that way.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Are you working on a new book?
I am in my mind. I haven't,
Okay. Yeah.
I wrote a book already, which was going to be my next book, Don't Buy Shoes, Buy Buildings, but I could not put that book out when everything has changed so dramatically. Like, if you have a governor say, don't pay the rent, that was not in my book, but that could happen.
Yeah.
So I have to really, and I don't even know if that's really the next book I want to put out.
Okay.
So I definitely have thoughts about, and I think you get little glimmers of it in my Instagram of what I'm thinking. And I definitely will put out another book, but when it's ready. I'm not in a rush. When it's coagulated in my mind what it is that I think I've learned from all of this. I'm still in the process of learning.
Right. I like that. You're allowing yourself to be in the messy middle, which is uncomfortable at times, but it's what gives us the fruit for when we come through it.
But I think because I'm older and wiser, I've been through these phases of life. The other thing I would love to tell women is, I have my diary since I'm 7 years old.
Oh, that's
I've
awesome.
kept a diary. And in the middle of this whole pandemic, I went back to my diaries and I'm like, okay, I've been here before, different circumstances, but I've been here before. And it kind of works through, you work through it. You really do. It's just so uncomfortable when you're going through it. It is. It
Yeah.
feels like hell.
Right.
But everything works itself out. And if you choose to, take yourself to a higher place at the end of these things, they do take you to a higher place. But you have to like let yourself go there. And it is a painful process.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you have to really believe that that's what's going to happen. That's why I tell women, I promise you it's going to happen, because I have the diaries of a lifetime to know that this has happened to me 3 or 4 times already.
Oh, wow.
Life is cyclical. There's
Yes.
just really bad times and really good times.
I like that. I mean, it just gives us permission to be where we are, right? It gives us
Nothing you
permission
can
to be
do.
in the mess.
There's nothing you can do. So you have to go to the positive, that it will reveal itself. And it always does. I always say life is a puzzle that reveals itself slowly. And that is really true. It's like what you were saying about the climb, like you only in hindsight figured out what it was about.
Right. Right.
And when you're in it, you're in process. So you can't really figure it out yet. You just have to have faith.
Mm-hmm.
You're in faith.
Yeah. You're making a leap of faith moving across the country.
That's right. And you know what? I also have like the great thing about getting older. There's not a lot about good about getting older,
Oh, come on. You make it look beautiful.
but the great thing is that you really do start trusting your intuition. Like when you're younger, you have these feelings that are very strong, and you go, but you let your mind, there is a moment for your logical mind. Like math is very logical, and I love math. But there are times when you're being led, and you have to go with it. And sometimes you sabotage yourself, when you're younger. And I think as you get older, you really trust your gut and your intuition. And that's a very powerful thing. When you
No, it
don't
is.
really know why you're doing this, it doesn't make any sense. It does. I mean, in my case, because my parents are sick, but I just know it's the right thing,
Right.
even though it's not completely logical.
Well, it seems like you've had a pretty good sense of yourself since even a young age, right? Like, here's a problem, I'm going to solve it. Here's a problem, I'm going to solve it.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, to be fair, so women don't think, I'm not any smarter than anybody else. I've had a lot of bad judgment in my personal life, a lot.
Okay.
I think sometimes when you are really advanced in your career life and you are
Right.
years ahead of other people, you're also very immature in your personal life. Like, so it's like, my son says, Mom, you didn't go to college and live in a dorm, and you didn't like, I was kind of like the Virgin Mary for a long time. I just lived a very sheltered life emotionally. And so I made mistakes because I wasn't that mature or that advanced, or I couldn't see things in front of me that were obvious in choosing bad people to be my mates, or not bad people. I wouldn't say necessarily bad people, but not the right people for me,
Your bad alignment.
from my value system or whatever. So, sometimes you're also like, I think I've been very advanced and aligned in my career, maybe because I had to help my parents early on. So I was much more grounded and mature, like the decision to go work for those 2 guys that maybe someone else would have chosen their ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was very, very advanced in that part of my life, and very regressed, I would say, or very immature in the emotional part of my life. So it's taken me a long time to catch up, right?
And then you went to school for the
And
emotional
I went to
side
school,
of
and
life, which
the
I'm sure
school,
helped.
that's right. The school, I think, helped me to slow down my career a little bit, which seemed also illogical at the peak of my career,
Right.
but it allowed the personal side of me to finish growing.
Right. So do you feel like you're the best you right now? Or where do you feel?
Well, honey, if I'm not the best me at this point, I don't know what the hell.
I love it.
I definitely feel like I mean, I'm not saying I still have a lot to learn and a lot to grow, but I feel like I'm a solid oak tree.
I love that.
I feel very solid as a human being. And I have to say, I think I really like myself. And I think that takes years. I mean, I want women, because women always go, oh, I feel so ugly. I feel so, like women have I think, I mean, I hate to say this, but the power of the penis is a big thing. I'm just like, I find men very like, I mean, the things that men have said to me, I've worked with more men than women, and the things like men think that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread when they really aren't.
It's amazing. It's
They
amazing,
think
that
and like they think
confidence.
they're gorgeous when they aren't, and they think that they're hot when they aren't. I mean, I've had men say things to me that I'm like, really, buddy? Like you think you're that? Wow. And women are much humbler. I mean, maybe
Yes.
life makes us humbler because we have a time clock that gives us finite times for things, like
True.
having babies, like this, so we never feel like we're fully enough. It takes a very long time to feel like you're enough.
Oh, I think I mean, I'm still working on that, right? Like I can do big things and you still have moments of doubt and questioning and just learning how to be in that and say, it's okay. Like that's part of it. That's part of being me. No apologies.
Yeah, for sure. But it does take time to get to the place where you're like, really? Like this is pretty damn good. I got it, like I've gotten myself together. And it's very funny because I'm dating at my age.
Woohoo! I like it.
And so I had a breakup with my mate when my kid went away to college, which happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And still very good friends. We're still very good friends. But I started dating later in life, right? And I was so afraid of dating. And then I realized, try dating men in their late 50s and early 60s. Like we got it way more together. Let me just tell you, like by the time you're my age, you're going to be like, really? Like you really find that a lot of men have not had to work on themselves unless they've had a near-death experience. You find men that have had real tragedies that get to, my age in a place where they're like really valuable. But so many men have not had to do the work
Right.
had to do.
No, I imagine. So my brand right now is break proof that I'm still like coming home to. And the reason why it's because the breaks in our life are the proof to either continue down our path or to pivot and do something different. Because autopilot, we're kind of unconsciously doing what we're doing. But when you have a break, all of a sudden you have time to say, wait a minute, does this fit? Is this who I want to be? Is this how I want to show up? Is this what
Right.
I'm pursuing? And so the break is the proof, right? That we can continue or pivot or do whatever. And it's our story. It's our life. We write it.
Well, I think what you're saying, which I always say in a little different way, is I have to constantly introspectively say, what's gotten me to this place, is that still working for me?
Right.
I mean, is that what's working? Is that what's going to work for me going forward? Do I even want that anymore? And that's a beautiful, in between space, in psychology, they call it the limbic space between lives, right? It's like when you're meditating and you have that moment where there's like, you clear your head, which is literally
A
like,
moment,
like a
like you
second,
breathed.
not
Yeah.
even a
Yeah.
second, right? And those are the limbic spaces, these little tiny spaces that you're like, what the hell just happened, right? And it's like where you have this little moment of, okay, maybe that's not what I want to do anymore. Oh, maybe that's not what I'm supposed to be doing next. Oh, like, and when you allow those moments to happen, you have these breakthroughs.
Yeah. Definitely. No, it just, I mean, and you give yourself permission to allow something else to show up. My winning formula got me here. Obviously, it's not working to get me there. I would be there. So what do I have to let go of to get to that next place?
It's funny. I have a girlfriend who I so thank her for what I'm about to tell you, because, the other thing is when you're successful, not a lot of people give you shit and tell you like, what the hell? And I was working on a project, like I think last year, and she said to me, you're still operating as if it's 2007. And I'm like, what the hell did she just say? And she goes, you already did that. Like you did that, bought that. Why are you thinking about still doing that project instead of owning the company that does that? Like, I don't know. She goes like, I feel like you're stuck.
Wow.
And I thought, like at first I was like, what'd she say? And then I thought, she's right. Like I was going back to what's comfortable is what
Yeah.
she was saying,
Yeah.
and what I could do in my sleep. And like, why would I ever want to do that again? Like I could do it in my sleep. I've done it. there's only like, it's only like, I've already done it at a peak. It can only go down from here. Why am I even thinking that? And maybe it's because I was tired. So I was tired. The pandemic had happened. It's like wanting comfort food.
Yeah.
I was wanting comfort food, but did I really want to do that? And she, you know, and I really thank her for, I mean, I think about that a lot, like what it took for her to be brave enough to say that to me, and
What a
how,
great friend.
what a great thing she said to me, because she snapped me out of it.
Right. We need people like that in our
We
lives.
do. We really, really, really do. And I've had a lot of those people, luckily, come into my life. And I always, and you know, I always say, I give everybody permission, because I, you know, somebody asked me the other day, asked me about, we did something, and the guy said to me, do you have any feedback? And I go, yeah, but do you really want to hear my feedback? And I said, because let me just tell you, I really want to hear your feedback. Like, you could tell me anything, because I really like people who challenge me. I do.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. It doesn't upset me. It doesn't, you know, and I really take it in, and and I don't, sometimes I go, I don't think you're right. And sometimes I think, if I keep thinking about it, I have to, you know, I like it. I like, I just like it. But I also realize, like, sometimes I've said things to my son, and he's like, Mom, your communication style doesn't work for me. And I'm like, wow. And he goes, I feel like you're negative reinforcing me instead of positive reinforcing me. And that's not how I can't take that in.
That's amazing that your son had the ability to have that language to communicate with you.
Well, my son's
Good
been in
job,
therapy.
mama.
My son's been in therapy since he's 8 years old. And I think he can I mean, I tell him all the time, I go, you're emotionally more intelligent than I am. He is. He really has a vernacular for being, you know, like when you go to psychology school, they teach you to tell your patient, here are the words for feelings, because most people don't even know what they're feeling. My
Right.
son could write the book on telling people how he feels.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, he's really good at it.
Good job, mom. That means you gave him a safe environment to be able
Yeah,
to navigate life. So
he does. He
congratulations.
does, and he knows how to advocate for himself better than anyone I've ever met in my life.
Isn't that a thing, right? Learning how, like, I can promote for somebody else so easily, but when it comes to myself, it's a struggle.
That's right. That's a toughie. That's a tough thing, but it's a necessary skill to really practice,
Yeah.
because it is much easier to sell somebody else or some product or whatever. It's harder to sell yourself, or to even advocate for yourself. Like, I need this at this moment. I need that, you know? It's, again, it's not so much what women do. We help others. We help our children. We help, but you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself.
Right. Right. No, I've learned that I now, when I call my mom, I'll preface, this is what I need from this conversation. So she doesn't go into automatic mom mode or whatever. I'll be like, I'm already feeling bad. I need a pump up session, or I need you to give me advice on this, or I need you to just listen. Right. And just having those little words before a conversation allow for the conversation to be so much more of what you need.
Well, it's so fascinating. I find that true with men too. Like, when you tell men, I'm really upset, or there's not, they want to fix it.
Yeah.
And I've had to say, I really don't need you to fix it. I don't even want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. I need someone to listen. I know what to do. I'm really smart. I'm going to figure out myself what to do. And it's also, you know, I think going to psychology school also really has helped me, because psychology school is really about quantum listening.
Quantum listening.
Really listening to someone and not feeling the need to give them the answer. Like, really feeling like the person has it in them to figure it out. And the power of listening and learning to listen also gives you the power to ask someone else to listen to you without having the need to fix it or find the answer for you. Because I really do want to find the answers myself.
I love that. That was a great lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
And how's it going in the dating world? Is it working?
It's interesting.
Well, you're moving. How's that going to play out?
Well, believe it or not, I have found some love with men that have come back from my past. Very interesting.
Nice.
I've dated a lot of people that are, you know, I'm not gonna ever date again, but are
Fair.
but I've turned into friends. I've also learned that I think that my fear when the fear when you're young is that you're going to, how do you get rid of people? Like, it's so hard, or are you going to hurt them? And you realize that there's other ways to do it. Like, you can actually meet somebody and think they're great. You just don't want to date them, but they could be your friend.
Yeah.
And I've met really great people as friends. So, like right now I'm in a bit of a romance with a guy from my past, from when who was my boyfriend many, many years ago. And there's something really lovely about that too. Like, someone who knew you when, and that you have a
Yeah.
history with, and that you, just like a friend that you meet many years later and you can rekindle very easily, like your
Yeah.
friendship. And so that's interesting, and we'll see what happens. But it's been an interesting journey just to be single and be vulnerable in such a different way at my age.
Mm-hmm. No, I believe it. Are you out of the TV industry entirely now then?
No, I would not say I'm out of it. I think that I own a lot of IP that I'm, now everybody wants your old IP. And I don't want to make shows that I'm in production 24 hours a day anymore. That was very grueling and exhausting, and been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I've made over 700 shows.
I know, it's amazing.
But I love content, and however that plays itself out. And I am very excited about the metaverse about to come.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited more than anything about creating content where I create a community, and where the community can own the content versus a network.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in that. That excites me. And there's a lot of things that excite me. I'm like you. I always say there's different kinds of people. I'm one of those people, and I know you're one of those people that is interested and interesting.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
am,
definitely.
I'm interested in other people. I'm interested in new things. And I'm interesting with myself. Like, I like to do interesting things. So I'm very open to the universe and open to new things and open. I love the idea of working with young people. I just went to see, because he's from my age group. I'm obsessed with Kenny Loggins.
Ah, that's awesome.
And I just went to his concert Saturday, and I learned so much from his concert, because he was such a beautiful man. Like, he was so gorgeous. Like, for young girls today, like, who is your, Harry Styles? I don't know, whatever. And yet he's now 73.
Wow.
He's no longer gorgeous,
Right.
but his talent is intact.
Oh,
And he's
amazing.
taken his talent, and he created a new band with all young, super talented singers and guitarists, and that are really good looking guys. And I was like, how smart of him,
Right.
that he is his internal beauty and his talent is still intact. And he's secure enough to surround himself with young, good looking, even more talented people. And it only elevates him more. And I think that's a real lesson as we get older.
Well, I think that's you too, in the standpoint of your book being published and your mentorship and all that you're
Yes.
giving back. I mean,
Yes.
it's
And also
inspiring
that
to all of
I've
us.
never valued, listen, I've had my moment of being the cute girl in the room or whatever.
Oh,
I've
1000%.
never valued that. Like, I value that, and I understand the power of beauty and all that, but I have really cultivated my inner life and my talents. And I think women have to hear that too, because a lot of young women today are only cultivating their looks on
Right.
Instagram and social media and all that. And I promise you that too shall pass.
Right.
So if you don't work on these other parts of you that make you interesting and interested, it's funny, because I think that I'm more like, as vulnerable as I am at my age dating, I think I'm more interesting to men now, because I think that when I was younger, it was like, I don't know. I think you have a lot more women when you've really worked on yourself, and you're like, again, you're self-made. You have your own money. You have made your own brands. You've worked in a lot of different things, and you're still open to doing new things. And I mean, that's kind of an interesting person.
That's amazing. No, I love it.
And I think that it's about cultivating, like, I was thinking about, like, I have this whole list of women that are 80 and 90
Yeah, that's
that are
amazing.
my beauty icons right now.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, you should always be thinking like that,
Yeah.
like, who are you looking at? Like, I'm in my 50s. I want to look at women that are 80 that I admire, that I can project myself toward,
Right.
you know?
Right. Well, that's why it's so important that we do own who we are and stand up and share ourselves with the world, because it gives other people ideas of what's possible and probable. Right.
That's
I have
right.
7 kids. That doesn't mean I can't climb. It just means it looks different than if I'd had no kids.
That's right. You look amazing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
when I look at like Rita Moreno and like, you know, Christy Brinkley and Norma Kamali, who are from 75 to 80 something. I mean, Rita Moreno just turned 90 and they're gorgeous.
they're gorgeous.
And
Yes.
they're still working. And, you know, I'm like, hey, it's possible, right?
It is, girl. You're living it. I love it. It's
That's right.
awesome.
That's right.
It's so good.
Well,
Oh.
I've loved talking to you. You're amazing.
Oh my God, I've had so much fun. I really appreciate your time, and I want to keep in touch with you. So I'll reach out.
Absolutely. You're so fabulous. I want to hear more about your climbing and what you're going to do next. So do you have my email?
Yeah, I do have your email. Let's keep in touch. I'll shoot you an
Let's stay
email.
in touch. And where do you live?
I live in Park City, but
My God.
if you come
So-
out skiing or anything,
Yes,
I'll take you around it
absolutely.
all. Yes. 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So lovely to meet you.
The same, Nelly. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.